In 2021, a digital image of a monkey sold for $2.7 million. Not a painting, not a sculpture, a JPEG file. An image that anyone with a computer could copy, save, and display for free. The buyer called it an investment. 6 months later, the same asset was worth less than $200. Most people laughed at this story. They called it obvious, inevitable, a collective madness that rational people would never fall for. Those same people had mortgages on houses that tripled in value between 2002 and 2006 for no fundamental reason. They had retirement accounts full of .com stocks in 1999 that they were absolutely certain would keep rising forever. We have been here before, many times. But the first time, the template from which every bubble that followed was cast happened in a small northern European country, in winter, over a flower. In 1637, a single tulip bulb sold for more than a skilled craftsman earned in 10 years. 3 months later, the market collapsed overnight, and the pattern it established has never changed. To understand the tulip mania, you need to understand what made the tulip different from every other flower in Europe. It was new. Tulips arrived in Western Europe from the Ottoman Empire in the 1550s. In a continent where flowers had been familiar and abundant for centuries, the tulip was exotic, geometrically perfect, and available only in small quantities. But what made it truly special, what transformed it into a luxury good, into a financial instrument, was a virus. The mosaic virus infected tulip bulbs and produced unpredictable, spectacular patterns of color. Flames of purple and white, stripes of red and yellow. No two infected bulbs produced identical flowers. Each one was unique. Each one was unrepeatable. Uniqueness plus scarcity plus wealthy buyers equals price discovery without a ceiling. Sound familiar? In 2017, Bitcoin's fixed supply of 21 million coins, the mathematical guarantee that no more could ever be created, produced the same psychological dynamic: unique, scarce, desired by increasingly wealthy buyers. The asset class is different. The scarcity psychology is identical. And scarcity psychology, unchecked by fundamentals, always ends the same way. The tulip market didn't begin as a mania. It began as a perfectly rational luxury goods market. Wealthy Dutch merchants, the richest private citizens in the world in the 1630s, flush with profits from the Dutch East India Company, purchased rare tulip bulbs for their gardens. Prices were high, but high prices for rare luxury goods aren't irrational. A Picasso costs more than a street artist's painting. That's not a bubble. That's a functioning market. The mania began when the buyers stopped being gardeners. When people started purchasing tulip bulbs not to plant them, not for the flower, not for the beauty, not for any use value whatsoever, but purely because they believed the price would be higher tomorrow than it was today. This is the precise moment every bubble crosses the line from market to mania. It happened with Dutch tulips in 1634. It happened with Japanese real estate in 1987. It happened with .com stocks in 1999. It happened with American housing in 2005. It happened with crypto in 2021. It happened with AI stocks in 2023. The trigger is always different. The mechanism is always identical. When the reason to buy becomes purely the expectation of a higher price, when the asset's use value becomes irrelevant to its market price, the bubble has already formed. The only question remaining is when it pops. What made the tulip mania structurally catastrophic wasn't the prices. It was the financial innovation that grew up around the prices. Dutch merchants invented futures contracts for tulip bulbs. You could buy a tulip bulb that hadn't been planted yet, that wouldn't bloom for months. You were purchasing the right to a future flower at today's agreed price, betting that by the time the bulb bloomed, the market price would be higher than what you paid. This meant you no longer needed the tulip to participate in the tulip market. You needed only the contract. And contracts are infinitely easier to create than flowers. The market for tulip futures grew to dwarf the market for actual tulips. Contracts were bought and sold multiple times before the underlying bulb had even been planted. Prices became completely detached from any physical reality. Now consider 2008. American banks created mortgage-backed securities, financial instruments that packaged thousands of individual home loans into a single tradable asset. The market for these securities grew to dwarf the actual housing market. Contracts on contracts on contracts, each one further removed from the physical house that nominally backed the entire chain. Tulip futures in 1637, mortgage-backed securities in 2007. The financial innovation changes, the structural dynamic is identical. When the market for claims on an asset grows larger than the market for the asset, the system has become dangerously detached from reality. I need to stop here for a second and say something. I know this is a small channel. You can see that. And the fact that you're here, watching this, giving this video a chance, that alone tells me I'm on the right track. If you're enjoying this series, a like, a comment, even just finishing the video, it means more than you'd think. And if you have an idea for what the next topic should be, drop it in the comments. I read everything. Also, you can give hype to this video. If something isn't working, the pacing, the topic, anything, tell me in the comments or the community tab. I'd genuinely rather know. Your input shapes where this channel goes, so thank you for being here. Now, let's get back to it. On February 3rd, 1637, tulip bulb prices collapsed. Not gradually, not over weeks or months, in a single afternoon. A routine tulip auction in Harlem failed to find buyers at the expected prices. Word spread. Other auctions failed. Within days, a market that had been doubling in price every few weeks was offering bulbs at 1% of their peak value and finding no takers even at that price. The speed of the collapse revealed a fundamental truth about bubble markets. They don't deflate, they burst. The reason is structural. In a bubble, every participant is simultaneously a buyer and a seller. Everyone is holding an asset they intend to sell before the crash. When confidence cracks, when even a small number of participants decide to sell at the same time, the buyers disappear. Not because the asset became worthless, because the only thing that gave it value was the belief that someone else would pay more tomorrow than what it was. This is the precise moment every bubble crosses the line from market to mania. This happened exactly to Lehman Brothers in September 2008. Not a gradual decline, a single week. 158 years of institutional history gone in 5 trading days. This is exactly what happened to FTX in November 2022. Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto exchange went from a $32 billion valuation to bankruptcy in 72 hours. The Dutch tulip market, Lehman Brothers, FTX, 3 different centuries, 3 different assets, 3 identical collapses. The speed is always shocking, the structure is always inevitable in retrospect. Not everyone was destroyed by the tulip crash, and the ones who survived share a set of characteristics that have appeared in every bubble collapse since. First, they distinguished between price and value. The tulip growers, the people who actually understood the flower, who knew what it cost to cultivate, what made a bulb genuinely rare versus artificially scarce, many of them exited the futures market early. Not because they predicted the crash, but because the prices had become detached from any reality they recognized. When you understand an asset deeply enough to know its fundamental value, overpricing becomes visible long before the crowd sees it. Second, they maintained liquidity. The participants most devastated by the crash were those who had committed everything to Tulip futures. Those who held diversified positions, who had not converted all their wealth into a single appreciating asset, survived the crash with their foundations intact. In 2008, the households that survived best were those without mortgage debt that exceeded the value of their homes. In 2022, the crypto investors who survived best were those who had never borrowed to invest. The asset class changes, the danger of leverage never does. The Dutch tulip crash of 1637 is almost 400 years old. In those 400 years, we have built financial systems of extraordinary sophistication. We have central banks, regulatory bodies, breakdowns, stress tests, and entire professions dedicated to preventing exactly this kind of collective irrationality. And we have had a major speculative bubble and collapse in almost every decade since. The tulip crash didn't happen because Dutch merchants were foolish. They were among the most financially sophisticated people in the world. It happened because the psychological mechanism that drives bubbles, the belief that prices will always be higher tomorrow than today, is not a feature of unsophisticated markets. It is a feature of human nature. And human nature has not been upgraded since 1637. What has changed is the speed. The tulip mania took 3 years to build and 1 afternoon to collapse. Modern financial systems can build a bubble in months and collapse it in hours. The sophistication of our tools has increased the speed of the cycle. It has not changed the cycle. 3 questions survive every bubble collapse and remain relevant to the next one. Do you understand the fundamental value of what you own? Are you holding more than you can afford to lose? And when everyone around you is certain that prices can only go up, are you certain enough in that certainty to bet everything on it? In the next video, we look at the most fortified city in the history of the ancient world. A city that held for 1,000 years against every army that came for it. Then lost, not because its walls failed, but because its treasury did. Constantinople. See you there.